Hello, welcome to another episode of Varsity360. I'm Columbian sports editor Micah Rice, joined today by Meg Wochnick. And if Meg is here and it's the fall, you know we're here to talk high school football. So hopefully you got a chance to pick up the Columbian's high school football preview section in last Saturday's paper. It had an excellent story by Meg on 4 versatile trend-setting players that you're going to see all over the field this fall. But we also introduce you to every league and every team. But what we're here to do today is to go out a little further on our limb here and have some 5 extra bold predictions from Meg as to what we'll see this high school football season. Now, disclaimer, Meg has not told me what those predictions are, so what you're going to see in my reaction is completely 100% honest and, off-the-cuff reaction to what Meg is about to talk about. So let's get right into it. 5 extra bold predictions for this high school football season. Meg, what's your number 1 prediction?
Yeah, so number 1, I know you all talked about it last week in the season debut episode about league favorites and why so. So I'm going to go a little bit beyond that. So not only will Evergreen snap its league title drought that dates back to 2007, but they're going to do it with a 9th grader leading the way at quarterback. So get used to this name. His name is Jaden Baum. Now, going into the August 21st practices, head coach Christian Swain hadn't decided who was going to be the starting quarterback. It was going to be between him and Braden James, who's a sophomore. I was able to see both of them in action during some July passing league stuff. And one thing that I think separates Jaden Baum really goes beyond his mechanics as a high school quarterback. Number 1, his physical maturity. You watch him play and he looks like he's already 16, 17 years old. And secondly, it's just kind of that social maturity, the way he was orchestrating and leading this offense. And I get it, it's sevens, he's facing a defense that's half speed, no blitz, I get that. But just everything that he was doing on the field just told me that this kid's ready to go and lead this team to a place that they haven't been in a while. And I'm assuming still 14 years old at the time that I watched him play. He was 5 or 6 weeks removed from the 8th grade graduation at Cascade Middle School. So there's a lot of things to like about this kid. So I'm going to go the extra bold prediction and say Evergreen will start the 9th grader, Jaden Baum at quarterback. And it'll be the first time that head coach Christian Swain, should he do so, will ever have started a 9th grader in his head coaching career at perhaps the most important position in high school football. Well,
that was going to be my first follow-up question is, if you could just put into perspective how rare it is for a freshman to get the starting nod at quarterback on a varsity football team.
Yeah, so if you follow what we do here at the Columbian, a couple of years ago, our cover story going into the 2022 season was about just how more and more 9th graders are not just varsity ready, but they're making an impact on the field, right? It goes beyond special teams. It goes beyond just sticking a kid at free safety and let him roam kind of out there in space. And so playing a quarterback, look, this isn't like 8-man football out here. This is quality 3A football. It reminds me of someone like Juan Pacia-Santon at Mountain View, who's going to be a 4-year starter at the center spot, right? Think of the last time someone has been a 4-year starter on the offensive line at a quality 3A program. So to see someone of his caliber, of his maturity physically, is really impressive to see. And again, should he do so, this will be the first time in Coach Swain's career that he's trusting his offense to a 9th grader.
Well, you've talked about just how he fits the mold and passes the eye test physically and maturity-wise. He's obviously left quite an impression on Coach Swain. But what does a kid like that have to do to really earn that trust coming up? Because I'm sure it's not something where you can just show up first day of practice and say, let me sling the ball a few times and give me the job.
Right, exactly. And so that trust started the Tuesday after Memorial Day, when it started with the off-season work, when the first day that high schools around Washington are allowed to start those spring practices. So again, he was still technically an 8th grader when that was all going on. And what's going to be impressive a step further is so many of Evergreen's skill position guys, especially out wide, are experienced, senior heavy. And so the fact that they're trusting this offense for a kid who's 3 years younger than they are, that's pretty impressive.
Well, like we said in our special section, it should be a very exciting league title chase in the 3As. They obviously have the first half of the season to try to figure out some of these issues at positions and see really who their first line of players is going into the league season. But we shall right away be looking at that quarterback position at Evergreen for some exciting stuff. So that's a great bold prediction number one. I like it. It shows that coaches are willing to tell you kind of the ins and outs of the position battles that they're dealing with. What's the second bold prediction that you have for this season?
So bold prediction number two, Mark Morris not only will be in the postseason, but they're going to be in league title contention the final 2 weeks of the year. So back in April, I know we did a number of spring football podcasts. There was a lot going on, and I touched about first-year coach Mike Peck coming in, and I think really kind of changing what Mark Morris football has been for the last couple of years. And so far, everything has come to fruition. There's almost 100 guys out for football at Mark Morris, and find the last time that Mark Morris had triple-digit numbers in football. So the kids are excited, the coaches around the area, whether it's been throughout the summer or whether it was their jamboree that they took place out last week at Kagan's Bowl. A lot of people are very high on Mark Morris. And the thing about Coach Beck is he's a winner, and he knows how to turn around programs. You remember what he did at Prairie just a quick few years in, his first time as a head coach. 2019, they won a share of the league title, and they were a play or two away from reaching the state quarterfinal. So I have no doubt that Mark Morris will take a huge step up. And you got to remember, this is the first time, I would say probably, let's go back 15 years, when there was a stretch when Mark Morris's program was the king of the 2A GSHL. They won 4 out of the 5 league titles during that stretch. They made the state quarterfinals twice, and in 2010 reached all the way to the semis. Then it was Hawkinson's turn to do something. 7 consecutive league titles in that stretch. They went on to win back-to-back state titles. But since Hawkinson's league reign ended 3 years ago, there have been 3 different schools that have won the league title. Ridgefield, Washougal, and last year it was Woodland's turn. And, this might be the most wide open this league has been in probably 13 or 14 years. And why not Mark Morris? So that is bold prediction number 2 for me, is the Monarchs.
Well, I like it because like Tim and I touched on last year, those last 3 league title winners in the 2A Greater St. Helens League, none of them were our preseason predictions. So it would be completely in character for the 2A Greater St. Helens League to have a team come out of left field and take it all. And, I think we talked about it when the hiring was made last spring, that I think Mark Morris really hit it out of the park with this hiring. Obviously, Sean Perkins had been there for 2 decades. You don't just replace a coach that's been there that long with someone who doesn't have a track record in high school football. So to get someone like Mike Peck, who has a proven history of offensive innovation, kind of a homecoming, he's got history at the school and in the town, I think is a great fit for that program.
I do too, and I want to give the tip of the cap to Sean Perkins, going out 110 wins over 24 seasons as a head coach, and that includes his 4 years at Bremerton before coming down to Longview 21 years ago. But the thing that's going to be different and already kind of ahead of schedule for Mark Morris is, yes, they're ditching the wing tee, something that was a staple under Sean Perkins for so many years. But these kids are having to learn a whole new skill set when you're going to the spread offense as Mike Peck runs. So I think what's going to separate Mark Morris, though, are the big boys up front. So across the line, they average 272, 6'1", and that includes 3 guys over 300 and a starting center at 210. So I think that's what's going to be the difference maker under first-year coach Mike Peck, the boys up front. Yeah,
I mean, if you can come out and start smacking guys in the face right away, you're gonna have teams on their heels, and then that opens a lot of things for that complex, innovative offense that Mike likes to run.
Absolutely.
All right, that's bold prediction number 2. I can't wait for bold prediction number 3 because the first 2 have been pretty good.
So we're going to go to the 1As now.
All right.
We're going to go not 1, but 2 of our TRICO schools will reach the state semifinals this year. I know, right? So, look, you look back and the last 25, 30 years, there's not a whole lot of state success when it comes to small school football in Southwest Washington. So I did a little research. Back to 1990, before Seton Catholic's great run to the semis last year, only 2 other schools out of the Trico have made the state semifinals. Ridgefield in 95 on its way to winning the state championship in an undefeated season, and La Center. And all 3 of those state semifinal appearances have been in the John Lambert administration. And for La Center this year, I also think they get back there. This is a team that is hungry. This is a team that has a huge junior class. And something that stuck out to me from the summer is Wyatt Eastland, the reigning defensive league MVP at backer last year, taken first string snaps at quarterback. He was their center last year. So keep in mind, their starting center, La Center starting center last year, is going to be taking snaps for string quarterback. I think it's impressive. You got to remember, too, Houston Coyle took over that starting quarterback spot last year with the season-ending injury to DeGarrett Manu. And so that gives John Lambert 2 different types of quarterbacks that he can put in different packages and so forth. But this is a huge, talented junior class, and I think this is going to be the first of 2 semifinal appearances. So let's go to Seton Catholic. We talked about them last week, about their run, their tremendous run to the state semifinals. They returned just about everybody, in fact, losing just 1 kid to graduation off its roster. But what's going to be different for me is, can they not only get back, but can they close the gap on Royal? There is 1A football in this state, and then there is Royal. 12 state championships, all since 96. 7 of the last 9 championships have come from Royal. Watching them out in Royal City last year for that semifinal game, they're an awfully, awfully impressive program. But that's going to be the question for me, is can Seton Catholic close that gap on a premier program like Royal? But yes, I do believe that we'll have 2 semifinal teams in the Trico, and that has never happened since the state playoff system for the WI was implemented in 1973.
Well, I think that's really exciting because the one thing you mentioned, the commonality, these 2 teams return almost everybody from last year. Yep. And these 2 teams, I mean, it was a 1-point game, I believe, when they clashed in the Trico League. Their meeting that La Center ended up winning with 2 touchdowns in the final 5 minutes. So, I mean, Seton Catholic, obviously, I think one of the things that Coach Chase mentioned to us when we were doing the preview story on them is that Royal really showed them how far they need to go and what that gap is like. So everything in the lead up to this season has been to try to, whether it's putting in a few wrinkles on the offense with Colton Gesser, who's the junior quarterback, who's a year older and a year wiser and a year more talented, to just knowing what that physicality is like.
Absolutely. And these 2 teams, no surprise, face off in week 9, November 1st, and that's going to be at La Center, which is a grass field. And as we all know, grass fields in the early part of November with the weather, it could be up in the air what's going to be like. So these 2 teams, you said it was 14-13, La Center winning for the league championship last year, and I have no doubt that it will come down to that game again in week 9, and that perhaps might be the best game in the state when you're looking at matchups in week 9. So I'm excited.
Well, it's amazing that we're already talking about week 9, but it just shows how much excitement is kind of condensed into those first 8 weeks of the season, all culminating in, I think, several week 9 matchups that, at least on paper right now, look like they could be for league titles. But we'll get to that when week 9 comes. Let's get the first couple of weeks under our belt first. And so that's a perfect segue to move on to bold prediction number 4. What's another thing that we're going to learn about right off the bat here?
This is going to be extra bold here. Camas will play for the state championship in Class 4A. And I know the last couple of years, Camas hasn't been able to get out of its own shadow, losing in week 10 to North Creek, losing last year to Mount Si, a double-digit seed after being down 4 touchdowns early in the second quarter. But there are so many things about this Camas team that you point to and think, this might be the most complete roster in all of 4A. They returned 7 guys, both sides of the ball. You've got a reigning league quarterback in Jake Davidson, 24 touchdowns, 2,500 yards. You got guys who can carry the rock, Titan Brody, Bo Harland. You got the weapons on the outside who are also in the secondary. You got that front seven, Aiden Jones at tackle. The reigning defensive league MVP, Nico Spirit at the Mike linebacker spot, and a secondary that always has guys in the right positions as multi-sport athletes. And we haven't even talked about a guy named Luke Webb, who we're going to get to in a minute for bold prediction number 5. And then you throw in the extra wrinkle of Adam Matheson taking over as head coach. And I'm not sure if I've ever described a head coach like this, but I'm going to go out and say it. I think Adam Matheson is a football genius. There is a reason why in the offseason that he is paid to travel all across the country and speak at these prestigious coaches' clinics and conferences. So, and if you think that Camas is just going to come out and run what Mountain View had done in the last 15 years under Adam Matheson, think again. So he and I have had a couple of conversations this summer. I'm not going to get into it, but let's just say it's going to be a bit of a different offense for Camas, and one that's going to be exciting to watch.
So you're saying he's got some cards up his sleeve he hasn't played yet.
Absolutely. Yeah. And look, the thing about Coach Matheson, for so many years when he was at Mountain View, he ran the O, he ran the D, he was the head coach, he was the athletic director. He just has to worry about the offense now. Longtime defensive coordinator Dan Kilty, he's got that thing under wraps. That's fine. And so now you got Jack Hathaway, the head coach the last 3 seasons, being that offensive play caller, and he can just strictly focus on the offense. So you look at teams around the state. Lake Stevens comes to mind, the 2-time defending state champions. 4A in Washington has never had a 3-time state champion. But again, they lose 10 starters for Lake Stevens. And again, with such quality programs like them and so many others around the state, you know they're going to be back just fine. But like I said at the start of this bold prediction, Camas might have the most complete roster in the state. And for all the intangibles that I mentioned, that's why I think they're going to play for a state championship.
Well, I do think that's bold because I feel like we've been here with Camas before where they do what they do in the 4A Greater St. Helens League. They beat a really tough team like Skyview in recent years, and then we're real high on them, and then something happens in the postseason where they either in week 10 or the first round that they stub their toe. Just asking the question, beyond what you've just explained, what makes it you think that this year is going to be different?
It's just a gut feeling. You know what I mean? It's just, it feels like all the intangibles are set in place to do it. The talent, the experience, the depth, the coaching, everything. The only question mark, and I don't know if it would be really a question mark, is the 5 guys up front, right? What's interesting is actually Camas's longtime O-line coach is now at Union. Union's O-line coaches are now at Camas. So isn't that a little kind of ironic on how that happens? But talking with Math this offseason a couple times, he's really been impressed with the growth. Kind of a quick turnaround with coaching with this offensive line. So there's a lot of good things in place at Camas. And again, we'll see if they can get it done. But, yep, that's why I'm going bold on this one. All
right. You mentioned this kid that you're going to go to with your number 5 bold prediction. And I remember I cover the state wrestling championships every year up at the Tacoma Dome. And I remember seeing this guy reach all the way to the semifinals and be like, who is that guy? He is a grown man out there. And I'm talking about none other than Luke Webb. Luke Webb, who obviously a really talented wrestler, but that's only his number 2 sport. He is a football player first and foremost, has family here they moved to live with after growing up in California. He's got a story there that I told during Matt Classic that we won't get into in depth right now. But anyway, he arrives at Camas, and he's going to have an instant impact.
Yeah, instant impact. You said if you're looking for a player to watch this year, Luke Webb is it. Bold prediction number 5. This kid's going to have 20 sacks. And I know, we're going bold, right? I know, it's a lot. 10 is a heck of a year for so many kids. But look, you mentioned he's from Southern California. Him and his younger brother Josh also on Camas's team. So where he was from in Southern California, he was part of the Trinity League, J. Sierra Catholic High School, and arguably the best high school football league in the state. 4- and 5-star recruits up and down the roster. Football's on its A game. The trash talk is on its A game. Everything about Luke Webb, you watch him. If you're able to just put his name into Google or social media, check out his huddle film. you said it. I mean, he is a man among teenagers out there, just physically, the way he plays the game. It reminds me of 1980s old school football. And I'm going to throw out a nickname right here. I'm going to start calling him the Boz, right? Everyone remember Brian Bosworth, right? And we're not talking about the Brian Bosworth in his 30 seconds with the Seahawks and that infamous Monday Night Football moment, getting run over at the goal line, Bo Jackson. But this is someone like Brian Bosworth, just completely dominated college football in the mid-'80s for Oklahoma on the national championship teams, and arguably was one of the best college players in the game. And just, you watch Brian Bosworth play and you watch tape of Luke Webb, and it is one and the same. You know, even if we got a photo of those two guys, put them up on the screen because it's pretty impressive to watch. So this kid, just an absolute animal. And that's why I'm going completely bold on this one with his 20 sacks. So he plays that edge spot, which is that hybrid D-line outside backer spot. And with someone like Dan Kilty running the defense, he's controlling the C and the D gaps. He can step over and over the nose on one play. He can drop back in coverage on 3rd and long. There's so many things that he can do because of his versatility on defense. And look, we haven't even talked about what offensively he can do. He has experience at tight end, but because of his strength and his size, put him in the heavy package. If you need a 4th and 3 at the goal line, he's going to run that ball in and have a couple of defenders on his back with him. So I'm excited to see what this kid can do. The first time in a Camas football uniform. He's already a WSU commit, and I expect him to have a fantastic year in Southwest Washington football.
Well, I mean, you know what you've said about Adam Matheson. If he has a player that he can use in any sort of package, he's going to find a way to use him. So I imagine we're going to see him be used in all sorts of creative ways. And you mentioned that he's committed to WSU. That's the one thing I wanted to follow up on, is it's not just us out here saying, oh, this kid is legit. Take our word for it. He's been on the college recruiter radar for quite a while.
He has, and I only imagine, yes, he's committed to the Cougs, but there's still going to be more and more offers that come his way, and probably very deservingly so. So we talk about how good this defense already is with guys like Aiden Jones and Nico Spear, and the secondary, who's got 3 out of the 4 guys back on defense, and just adding him is just another layer of what's going to make this Camas defense and this Camas team hopefully have a very good year.
All right. Well, it all kicks off this Friday with week 1 of the 2024 high school football season. And I love that because these first 2 weeks of Varsity360 have been all about us predicting stuff, whether it's league championship races or today, 5 bold things that you should look out for. But starting this Friday, we can actually see the teams go head to head on the field and take some knowledge from that. And we'll be back to talk about what we learned in these first couple of weeks, if not right away after week 1. I can't wait to get out to the field on Friday. I know you can't either, Meg. So we'll be here all season here on Varsity360 talking about the ins and outs, the subplots, the twists, the drama of high school football in Southwest Washington. So as always, be sure to follow us on 360preps.com, follow us on social media, and we will see you out at the field.